Afternoon and welcome, and thank you all for joining us at this public forum. Today is a pleasure to introduce the finalist for the Superintendent of the Attleboro Public Schools. He currently serves as the Director of Curriculum Instruction for the New Bedford Public Schools. Again, it's my pleasure to introduce you, Dr. Anthony Azar. Dr. Azar is going to start off by giving us a brief presentation about his professional and personal life, and from there we will go on to a question and answer stage of questions that have been brought to us previously by members of the community, and then we will have Dr. Azar wrap it up with a couple minutes of parting speeches to us. So again, Dr. Anthony Azar, thank you.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me today. I had a wonderful day, and what I'd like to share with you is about 30 years of education that I have as a background in about 2 minutes. So that's pretty interesting, I would say, that in itself. I started as a classroom teacher in South Providence, social studies. After 11 years there, I moved on to the Taunton Public Schools. I became an assistant principal for about 7.5 years. And then from there, I went to Exeter West Greenwich Junior High School as a principal there for 3 years. And then I came back to, I liked Taunton so much, I came back to Taunton as a principal for another 3 years. And now I find myself in a place called New Bedford for the last 6 years, and currently the administrator for curriculum and instruction. The highlight of my career really has been my motivation and my own inspiration, which is my family. I have 2 children. One is a high school student at Dayton Rehoboth, and the other one is a 7-year-old son, Donnie, who is now a first grader at the Palmer River School in Dayton Rehoboth as well. And one of the things, and my wife also is a school teacher. I don't want to leave my wife out. And she's not here today, so she didn't have any of the questions that have come this way. She's an 8th grade teacher at Taunton High School. And Taunton High School, as some of you may know, now is from 8th grade to 12th grade, and the middle school configuration is grade 5 to 7. And I mention my family because a lot of the rare opportunities that we have to sit around the dinner table, because who's at soccer, who's at theater practice, who needs to be picked up. When we do have an opportunity to all sit together, we talk about school. We're not supposed to talk about school, but naturally we talk about school because that's our day. Our day is around school. And through the lens of the eyes of a 7-year-old first grader, and through the lens of the eyes of a 15-year-old freshman at the high school level, and through the eyes of a teacher who's teaching 8th grade and some 9th grade classes as well, we have a great opportunity to talk about the opportunities that our children have. And what motivates my wife in her class, and what motivates me currently in New Bedford, is to make sure that every student that crosses our path has the same opportunities as our children do as well. So that's very much a motivating factor to see that. Attleboro, when I was fortunate enough to see that you were looking for a superintendent, Attleboro has meant a lot to our family. From Cape Ron Park Zoo, of course the playground, before you even get into the place, that's a great magnet to draw a 6, 7-year-old child in. But my daughter, who's 15 now, has been coming since she was 7, 8 years old as well. So what we do is we have my daughter watch my son because she wants to still be part of the playground, but she thinks by being 15 it's not cool to be at the playground, but watching your brother at the playground is pretty cool. So she still has that opportunity to go back to the times that she enjoys immensely. My family is part of the Rehoboth Minutemen. My daughter likes to call them the Rehoboth Minute People. Very politically correct there. So she's part of that. And the reason why I bring that up is because they march in the Attleboro Parade. And someone has to drop them off at the beginning and the end, and that would be me. So we do spend, time here in Attleboro between those 2 areas. My daughter was afforded the opportunity to have some of her artwork displayed at the Attleboro the museum through the Smarts Collaborative. She's been involved in the Oak Knoll Conservatory in a number of presentations during the summertime. And the school that we visited this morning brought back a lot of memories because I used to drop my daughter off there during a Smarts Collaborative opportunity that she had at that particular school. So, it really means a lot to me to be here today. And as I've mentioned several times today, Bliss Dairy certainly gives Newport Creamery a run for its money, but Somerset Creamery on Route 6, there could be an equal draw there, but that's okay. That's for another discussion. The reason why I applied to Attleboro is very simple. I believe it's a great fit. The opportunity is there for the learning to continue, but also to continue in a trajectory that it's headed for, and that's to the top, no question about it. What I saw today in the elementary school, walking around with Principal Zinni, who I also happen to know in Taunton, where she was at one point. She was a teacher there when I was a principal of the Mulcahy Middle School. So we got to relay some stories way back in the day. Not that it was too far back, but it's a few years ago. But that was very exciting because we saw in Catherine, you know, a real educational leader, an instructional leader. And what we saw today at that school was a lot of positive things in the classrooms, teachers teaching, students learning, and we had a chance to talk to the kids as well. And I always have that affection towards that kindergarten and first grade, because that's where my son is, obviously. And to see the things in place already here in Attleboro, and then to take it to the next level, which would be a win-win for everyone. I believe that I have those skills to bring us to where we need to be, because that's what I do day to day in New Bedford as well. My role is to move the learning from an instructional standpoint, and after meeting with the administrative staff, the central office staff here, there's a lot of things that are in place, systems are in place that we can certainly move to the next level. So with that, that's why I'm here today, and whatever the next step is.
Thank you, Dr. Azar. Yes, this is the question and answer stage. I will be asking the first question. My first question, before I lead up to Mr. Murphy, who is going to do the general audience questions, would be, why do you want to be the superintendent of the Attleboro Public Schools?
Very clearly stated, the motivational factor, the family commitment to Attleboro as a community, that's number one. The second one, which I'll expound upon right now, has to do with my experiences and where Attleboro is from an educational standpoint. I have worked closely in New Bedford at all different levels, from pre-K to 12. Currently, we are working very diligently on district learning walks, which clearly have been a part of the instructional process here in the Attleboro Public Schools. The learning curve, stepping up to the next level as superintendent, would be a very small one for myself, because what your district learning walks look like are very similar in scope to what we're doing in New Bedford, something that I live every day. I'm in classrooms all the time. What you want to do is to be visible, and you want to be in the trenches. One of the most compelling reasons to be a teacher, in my estimation, is to inspire kids, to inspire them to do something that they normally would not do. And what I saw today in the classes at Thatcher and at Brennan, that I'm sure resonate throughout the entire district, and then the presentation that I saw as well at the high school, I mean, this community, the public schools here are ready to go to that level where it's like the wow. I mean, you're in a very good place now, but you can be in an even greater place. So seeing that, matching Attleboro to what my experiences are, and from a family standpoint and where I am professionally, Attleboro to me is what I think would be a perfect fit.
Thank you, Dr. Azar. I now pass it off to my colleague on the school committee, Mr. Dave Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Azar, the questions that will be directing your way during this next segment have come from various stakeholders throughout the Attleboro School District. Some of them collected at today's public forum, some collected at yesterday's public forum, some collected during the focus group session section of the superintendent search. So they come from various sources, but all from individuals with a connection to the Attleboro school system. The first question comes from a staff member, although I suspect it's on the mind of many parents and families as well, and it has to do with technology. Could you please share your thoughts on keeping up with technology, helping develop a 21st century educational experience for Attleboro students, and if you have any thoughts specifically on digital textbooks? This questioner would like to hear your thoughts.
Certainly, thank you. We'll start with the digital textbooks. We're in the process right now. We have a district curriculum committee that was formed last year. And one of the things that we look at in that particular forum is ways to engage students, obviously. We need students engaged, we need teachers engaged with the students. And one of the commitments that we're making there is for the e-reader textbooks and so on and so forth. Because from a standpoint of financially speaking, you can get an e-reader, you can get any kind of textbook. Textbooks are $100 a piece, and you see what your kids carry home sometimes, and those book bags are just, I don't understand somehow, and I'm part of it. I see my daughter come home with her book bag, and then I, of course, have to move it to a certain place in the house, and then I'm thinking it's going to come with me, but it typically doesn't move unless I put my knees into it, and then we drag it across the room practically. Those situations are very difficult to look at, only because we know the technology is available, and the e-readers are very inexpensive and would be very helpful. So I'm very open-minded to that. From a technology standpoint, in the New Bedford Public Schools, particularly one of our middle schools, Normandy Middle School, where I was there for several years, we have the document readers, we have the Elmos, we have in-focus projectors. The more engaging the instruction, the more apt the students will do well. They'll be engaged, there'll be an understanding of where that is at. So technology is very much in the forefront of whatever it is that I do. One of the things that most recently I've become responsible for is overseeing the ELL program within New Bedford Public Schools. Those of you who have been keeping up with the initiatives that are coming out of the state, there's the retail initiative that incorporates WIDA standards to make sure that all students have access to the curriculum. And one of the things we did at the high school was to make sure that the teachers there have the necessary tools, and one of those tools was the Promethean boards. Some people refer to them as smart boards. If used the right way and not a whiteboard where you draw on it and you get yelled at for writing on it like that, if it's used properly and under certain circumstances, it opens up the world to kids that normally would not have those opportunities. So the other piece to that, we utilize Study Island. There's a number of accelerated reader programs and things like that we have organized within New Bedford Public Schools. But it's that immediate feedback. Now, there's a more technical name for clickers, but nevertheless, we have incorporated that in many of our classrooms through what is known as the Massachusetts Tiered Support System. And one of the components of that is the Universal Design for Learning. It's a grant that we wrote, we put it together. And when I say we, it was a group of staff members at Normandy Middle School that we wrote the grant, we received the grant, and now we go out to Natick, and I'm with the staff members, writing a grant, making sure the implementation piece is intact. And one of those individuals that I work with, he was able through the grant to purchase the clickers. And the clicker is very simple, in-focus projector. There are questions here, people in the audience, you just click your answer, and it's immediate feedback. So those formative assessments that drive instruction, that it's immediate, and that's what we want. We want immediate feedback. There are times that a student might take a test and not get the test back for a couple of days, a week, who knows. But this is immediate, and it's similar to video games. How kids play video games. Instantly they get their feedback, they get their score, they see what they have, and that's what we're competing against. So technology is extremely important to get it into the classrooms, but also it's important in how we use it. That's the key ingredient, how we use it for instructional purposes.
Thank you. I should add also that we've attempted to collect a representative sampling of questions, so we're trying to ask the questions that will encompass some of yours. So if you don't hear your specific question asked, it's either because of that, because you'll be able to see Dr. Azar's response in the formal interview that's already taken place and will be aired starting Thursday night, I believe, and then over the weekend, or because we ran out of time, which is the third reason you may not, but we'll do our best to not have it be the third one. The next question comes from a parent of two students at the middle school level and one student in the elementary schools. How do you think the parent-teacher organizations can best serve the children of Attleboro, and what role do you see them playing in the school district?
The role that I've seen them will play, and what I've seen in my past experiences as a principal at the building level, was that in one venue in Exeter West Greenwich Junior High School, there was no parent organization when I arrived there, which I found that's like trying to sit on a stool with only two legs. You have the educational piece, you have the teaching piece and so on, but no parental organization. So there were several parents who sought me out to find out about that situation, and before you knew it, we had a PTO up and running. The purpose of any PTO, and even at Mulcahy Middle School when I was there for several years as well, they served, it was more than just fundraising. It wasn't about just raising money, although that was a key component, naturally, but it was also about realizing that parents absolutely have to be involved. At the middle school level, it's quite unique that probably your child needs you more than ever at the middle school, and that's usually where you cut off. That's, it's like, see you later, pretty much. Elementary school, you kind of hang around with your kid a little bit, kind of oversee them. They're pretty cool with you while you're there. Then all of a sudden middle school comes around and it's like, I'm not sure who that person is, that type of thing. And then sure enough, what are we doing? I speak from experience. We kind of like backtrack and leave them out there. Okay, good luck to you. But middle school is probably the more important time to be, looking over your child's shoulder in a good way, to be there, to be close by, to not on arm's length, but pretty close. But if they need you, they're there for you. So the PTO in my venues in those two areas, particularly Mulcahy Middle School, they helped on there was if we had search committees looking for superintendent or assistant superintendent or assistant principal, they were brought in to have that voice as well, just like student voices. So they were part of that process. If we were looking currently in New Bedford, going through curriculum and looking at textbooks, we would bring in PTO members to take a look at textbooks with us as well to make sure that that voice was heard. So it was more than just fundraising. It was more to be our liaison to the student, to the parent community, to have them come on board, and also create opportunities for different kinds of nights. We had a literacy night, we had a math night, we had a unified arts night, and the PTO was very helpful in organizing that, getting the information out to the community, and bringing people to it, particularly parents. So they're very instrumental. It's a very strong relationship to have a very active PTO involved in your school district or your school building.
Thank you. A question from a staff member. If there were questions that have come in today that we were not able to ask the other finalists, we can submit those questions in writing. So just so you don't think that there's some information we have from one candidate but not from another. From a staff member, what are your views on after-school programming and how that affects the whole student?
Absolutely.
Emphasis on the word whole.
Certainly. At Normandy Middle School, we had 34 after-school activities. At Mulcahy Middle School, we had approximately 26 after-school activities. Absolutely instrumental in building the whole child. And the key, what I heard a lot today from the high school presentation that I was fortunate enough to sit through was student voices. Students coming up with clubs, names of clubs, and seeking out advisors within the high school to take on that. And from what I understood and what I heard today, you have an incredible, compelling group of people out there committed to the district and committed to the staff and to one another and to the students to take that even that much further. Student voice saying that we need a debate club. Teacher taking that and running with it, going through the paperwork, how do we do this? A commitment there. Very important to the whole child, having those after-school activities. Not everyone makes the baseball team. Not everyone makes the teams. Or theater, or whatever the case might be, if it's competitive. Clubs then are there to pick up the pieces, sort of say, something, I'm good at this, chess or checkers or whatever, whatever's going on in the district at that particular time frame, whatever game that they're playing. Today we heard about ultimate frisbee. I read an article just the other day about ultimate frisbee. They want to go pro. They want to do a pro league on ultimate frisbee. So that's ideal. So it's very important to have clubs associated with the school and thus the community as well.
Sure. Switching gears a little to your own managerial and leadership skills, what is a criticism of you that people you have worked with might associate with you? Sure. And feel free to identify a weakness of yours.
Oh, absolutely. Certainly, I have been known to send out emails at all times of the year, nighttime. With a 7-year-old, by the time he, get him to bed, I do a lot of my work after 10 o'clock, and it's not unusual to receive an email from me at whatever time it might be in the morning or whatever. The other thing that comes back to me was that, Dr. Azar, do you really think we read your 1 o'clock a.m. emails? I said, no, probably not, and that's okay. Because what it does for them is when they do read it at 6 or 7 in the morning, they can then begin working on it. So I figured I'd get mine in the queue before they get everybody else's. So by the time they get mine, they get that first, that, you know, when they log on to the internet or whatever it is that they're doing to get that email. So that would be a, something constructive, more criticism than anything else. One of the weaknesses, I would say that I think is a strength that I expect a lot out of people. I expect, my expectations are extremely high because the students that are in front of us can be fragile at all times. You never know when that student comes into your classroom that, you know, what their story is, or how you as an administrator or you as a teacher greet that student. And that, to me, the expectation is that you see that student and then you take it from wherever it is, where that student comes to you from. And the expectation is that you as the administrator, the teacher, you are basically to inspire that student. That's my expectation. I was inspired as a student, myself, by 2 particular teachers. That, I mean, you're talking 40 years ago, you know, in an elementary school. I still remember that teacher, and then I remember another high school teacher in very, you know, varying different ways. So it's very important to have very high expectations. And sometimes people feel as though the expectation isn't reality or practical. Well, that's up to them to decide. So that could be decidedly as a weakness, but I think it's like a strength. So.
Okay. A parent of 2 elementary school students asks, what will you do first if you become superintendent of the Attleboro school system, if you get this job, and why?
Okay. The first thing that I would do is probably call my wife and tell her that I got the job, because I would have to, just because. So that would be the first thing. The second thing is that, and what I've been working on since I had become a finalist, was that the community has done an inordinate amount of work in putting together the focus groups that led up to this process. And one of the things I was sharing earlier was that the motto in Rhode Island, of course, is hope. And one of the words that I saw streamlined through the focus groups was hope, you know, future. And I remember being at a conference not too long ago, and I was sharing in a group session about hope, and somebody else said to me that that's not a strategy, hope. I said, no, it might not be a strategy, but it's something that you can cling to, that you have hope, and you give kids hope, and you give one another hope. And what I saw particularly throughout that documentation that I received from the school committee was an incredible commitment from this community to take your school system and go to the next level. Whatever that level will be, you know, is wherever we can control that. And it's a blueprint. It's a blueprint of success, so to say, as to where the community wants to go. There might be different pathways to get there, but you've done the legwork as a community, as administrators, as government officials. And for a incumbent superintendent to dismiss that and have their own ideas, that's a recipe for disaster. So I would say to that individual that the second thing after calling my wife would be to continue to look at the focus group information that has already been derived from this community, and to use that as my focal point as I continue to become more and more familiar with the district and the community and the schools.
Thank you. A staff member at Attleboro High School asked the following. The superintendency, and I know we have already touched upon this on our day, but not for the audience because we couldn't fit everyone around the table at Scorpios. So
sure.
The superintendency was open in your own district until recently. As an important administrator looking to move up, why did you apply for that position?
Yes. One of our school committee members in New Bedford was publicly said that he would not consider anybody from the New Bedford Public Schools. Past practice, they have hired from within, and it hasn't worked out, so they felt that they needed to do a national search, and therefore nobody from New Bedford should apply. I, being the type of person that I am, I felt that was very prejudicial. I felt that my credentials clearly would make me a fine candidate in New Bedford, and I did apply. I didn't get an interview. So nevertheless, that's what transpired there. So yes, I did apply. I was the only district person in New Bedford who applied for that position. And the reason why I know that is because the individual, the president from Bridgewater State University, who was overseeing the process, he announced that, and that was in the newspaper, that only one district candidate applied. And I know that I applied and my paperwork went in. But when I heard that edict, sort of say, from the school committee about not, you know, no room in the inn, sort of saying, I didn't think that was right, and I decided that it was right, it was just, it was proper, and I applied, just like anybody else would have had that opportunity. So.
Understood. Another question from a staff member in the school district. What attributes and characteristics would you look for in applicants to positions of leadership or teaching positions for that matter?
One that, you know, you look at someone's body of work, you see where they're coming from, whether it's right out of college or it's a seasoned staff member who's just moving, relocating for whatever reason. You would look at, you know, from the paper standpoint, you know, what credentials they have, and, you know, on paper, does it look like a good fit? Then you bring in the candidate to interview. You make sure that the interview committee is representative of the community based upon what level of what the level is of the employment, you know, what positions being applied for. And what you would look for in that individual would be an understanding of the content knowledge, basically. So if it was a history teacher or physics teacher, you would want them to have a solid background in that. Experience-wise, depending on, you know, how many years they've been in the educational arena, sort of say. But one of the key ingredients to anybody that I surround myself with would be collaborative, that they would have an open door, an open mind, that they would be able to respect somebody who comes to the table, regardless of what the person's issue is, to be able to respond to them by listening to them. But listening is only part of it. You have to hear what the person is saying. So to me, listening and hearing are two different things. You can listen and listen and listen, but you might not be hearing what the person's saying. So you delve in deeper. You hear what they're saying, and then you can respond to that. So anybody who I would hire, or I would ask my administrators to be part of the hiring process as well, is to make sure you have a representation of the community, part of that staff, to bring in that person, and then you know, from there you make a decision.
Sure. Dr. Azar, you mentioned the information and documentation that the school committee provided to you as a finalist. What about the Attleboro School District in particular would you like to learn more about? What is one element or dimension of our school system that you're eager to learn more about?
I would say that in any district, and this is what we're dealing with in New Bedford right now, our high school doesn't do well on paper, data-wise. It doesn't do well at all. Thus, our district's not doing well, you know, from the standpoint of the Department of Education. But we have teachers that work just as hard as anybody else in any other community, but it's not showing up where it needs to show up. So what I would like to learn more about is, of course, the high school. I mean, I sat through a presentation today that really piqued my curiosity about, my goodness, these 4 individual students who came forward to present what they did today, that if the opportunities are there for every student in Attleboro, K to 8, to have those opportunities when they get to the high school, I would love to know how it's happening, what's happening there, and just run with it. And that's really piqued my curiosity. Because just one more thing, any community, the flagship of any community is the high school. And regardless of what's happening in your elementary schools, if the high school's not doing well, your district's not doing well. So that's very important.
Sure. Dr. Azar, an important piece of any superintendent's job is the building a relationship with the school committee. So could you talk a little bit about what elements you think you would need to incorporate into your leadership in order to build a constructive relationship with the Attleboro School Committee?
Absolutely. For 30 years, I've incorporated an open door policy. It's very simple to say, but it's actually another thing to put in practice. The reason why I feel as though I've been successful over the years is because I have a mutual respect for people who come to the table. Whomever has a legitimate concern, or maybe not a legitimate concern, who am I to say whether it's legit or not, till such time as I listen to that person and hear what they're saying. So from that standpoint, it would be the same relationship that I would have with the school committee, that we have constituencies that we have to answer to, that we have a mutual respect, that you know, the demarcation line of setting policy and enforcing policy, making sure the district's doing what they need to do, you know, based upon the school committee, is to have that mutual trust also that is built up over the years. Also, from the vantage point, as I shared this afternoon with the mayor, as a former state senator from Rhode Island, you know, I do understand that school committee people have to meet a certain responsibility to their constituents, because that's who got them there. That's why they were elected. But by the same token, the school committee would understand that the superintendent has a constituency that they have to address as well. So with that mutual respect, that you can come to the table, work out whatever concerns you have, and then walk away. But the key to the walking away, and what I saw when I was a state senator, was that once the debate, or the argument, or whatever you like to call it, is over, it's over. That there is a side that, yes, walks away, the majority rules. Those individuals who didn't have what they wanted then join the majority, and then we walk away because we compromise, and you know, everything is, you know, it works out. It's palatable to both sides. Then we go forward on it. But we don't continue to hold grudges because, you know, we didn't win that one, or whatever the case is. But at the school committee level and at the superintendent level, the commonality is the student. So there is a common ground that we reach, because ultimately, as we, the professionals, you know, in the district, if we don't convey that to the public and to our administrators and to our students, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. And that's not going to bode very well for academic achievement. That's not going to bode very well for anything that's going on in the community. So it's a mutual trust and admiration for where we are in life, in professional being, and then walking away after it's over and we battle it out, or whatever you want to call it. We walk away and we show a united front.
Sure. We have time for about two more. First one, if you were the Attleboro High School commencement speaker this year for the class of 2013, what piece of information would you impart, or pieces of information would you impart to the graduates?
What I would love to say is that I would ask the graduates to, this could be dangerous, close their eyes, and to think of a time in elementary school, K to whatever, that they were inspired by somebody, and for them to envision who that person was, is, or whatever. And you would get a lot of different responses. And to take that information and what it is that they were inspired by, for, or whatever, and to remember it and to follow that dream into the next educational pursuit. Now that, like I said, that could be dangerous, because, you know, back in elementary school, they might have wanted to become, I don't know, a monster truck. You know, like my son wants to become a monster truck when he gets older. You know, so there's a little driving one. Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry, not become a truck, but wants to drive a truck. And I'm like,
Got a better chance.
yeah. So you know, but what it does is it harkens back to that individual. Could have been a teacher, could have been a parent, could have been an older brother. You know, some story that they connect with, to make sure they don't forget what got them to that graduation. Don't forget how you got there. And if it was a troubling time for them, it would also inspire them to move forward to whatever that next level is that would bring them.
Sure. Final prepared question. This from, I actually don't know who this is from. It's from one of the focus groups, so it could be from anyone.
Sure.
If you were to lead the Attleboro School District as superintendent over the next several years, how would you like your legacy to be described by those who were connected to the school system during your tenure?
What I like to, ideally speaking, would be that he was very fair, very firm and consistent in what he did or what he does. It would also be a point where, you know something, you could go to Dr. Azar regardless of what the situation was and he would listen and hear what you were saying. He may not have agreed with you, he may not have given you what you wanted, but at least he had the opportunity to listen, bring it to the full committee if need be, bring it to a focus group or whatever, and he did his due diligence in trying to get an answer for you, whether it was a positive or a negative one. No one really knows, it would be a case by case. But he was always able to be approachable, visible, and at the end of the day, he was fair in how he arrived at whatever decision it was that was meted out or whatever was needed to be done.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman?
At this time, I would like to thank my fellow school committee members who have joined me today and made this logistics of the day possible, along with several members of our administration and staff, Mr. Dave Murphy, Ms. Franzito, and Mr. Bill Lawson, and I thank you very much. And with that, I would like to have some closing remarks by Dr. Azar.
Certainly, thank you very much. Today was really a fantastic day for myself, and for a number of reasons. I would say every day I'm in some classroom, I'm in some building, somewhere in New Bedford. I currently oversee part of the district learning walks. I say part of, we have 19 elementary schools, we have 3 middle schools, we have a high school, we have 2 alternative schools. We have approximately 12,536 students, and that's always changing, you know, the transiency of kids coming in and out. Also, at this point, responsible for overseeing, we are at some point moving from the MCAS to the POC assessment, so I'm overseeing that piece as well. I oversee 10 directors that we're working on instructional delivery through the district learning walks, gathering data to see where the pockets of information are that will make our school system hopefully one of the better ones in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. More importantly, and to the crux of the matter here, the learning curve that I have coming into Attleboro will be a very small one. The initiatives that we work on in New Bedford are here in Attleboro. I work on those day to day. That's my job. That's what I do, and I enjoy it immensely. If given the opportunity to become the superintendent of schools in Attleboro, it would it's always been a goal of mine. Obviously, it's the natural ascension of being a teacher, administrator, and so on and so forth. It would fulfill a dream that I've had for a number of years. And Attleboro, to me, is a perfect fit. I hope you all agree at some point next week. And if you do, I appreciate it immensely. Thank you all for coming today. It's very appreciative. And like I said, I saw a lot of solid things going on in the district today. A lot of kids learning, a lot of teachers teaching, and it was enjoyable. Thank you very much for having me today. Thank you. Thank you.
It was a pleasure having you. On behalf of the Attleboro School Committee, I thank you all for coming and joining us with Dr. Anthony Azar.
Thank you.
Again, thank you very much.